I used to believe that love didn't have to be loud to be real, that if the people chose each other quietly, day after day, that would be enough. I believed that for a long time, long enough to let it carve permanent marks into me. I met her on a random Tuesday, the kind of day you don't expect your life to split into before and after. It was nothing dramatic, no sparks, no movie moment collision, just a people standing in line at a coffee shop, both pretending not to be tired, both lying about being fine. She noticed the book I was holding and asked about it. I remember being surprised that someone actually cared enough to ask. Her laugh was soft, almost hesitant, like she didn't want to take up too much space. That should have been my first warning. People who apologize for existing usually carry more weight than they show. We started seeing each other slowly. Painfully slowly. Texts that stretched late into the night. Walks that went nowhere on purpose. Conversations that felt deeper than they probably were. She told me she'd been hurt before. I told her I understood. We both lied. Her pain was still open. Mine was just hidden better. At first, she made me feel chosen. That intoxicating feeling where someone looks at you like you're not just an option, but the place they want to rest. She would hold my hand like she was afraid I might disappear. She said things like, "I've never felt this safe, and you're different from the others." I believed her, because I wanted to, but there were cracks even then. Small ones. The kind you ignore because everything else feels warm. Sometimes she would pull away without explanation. Messages would go unread for hours. Plans would be canceled last minute. When I asked what was wrong, she'd smile and say, "Nothing. I just need space." I learned quickly that pressing for answers only made her retreat further. So I stopped asking. That was my first mistake. She had a way of making me feel like patience was proof of love. Like if I just waited long enough, stayed quiet enough, she would finally choose me completely. I didn't realize I was slowly training myself to accept uncertainty as intimacy. They were other men. Not officially, not openly. Just ghosts. Names that slipped out accidentally. Stories that didn't quite add up. When I asked, she'd say, "They're just friends," or "You're overthinking it." And every time I doubted myself, she seemed relieved. I remember one night especially. We were lying in bed, the room lit only by street light bleeding through the curtains. I told her I loved her. She went silent, long enough for my heart to start racing. Then she said, "I care about you. A lot. Not I love you. Never that." I should have walked away then. Instead, I stayed. Because sometimes love doesn't feel like fireworks. Sometimes it feels like waiting in the dark, convincing yourself that the light will turn on. Eventually, I didn't know yet that this wasn't the beginning of something beautiful. It was the beginning of learning how much pain I was willing to tolerate just to not be alone. Asterisk. Loving her started to feel like standing in a doorway that never fully opened. Every time I thought I was finally inside, she'd step back and remind me I was still waiting. They were good days. Dangerously good days. Days when she'd wake up next to me and trace circles on my arm, telling me how lucky she felt to have me. Days when she talked about trips we might take, apartments we might share, a future that sounded real enough to touch. On those days, I felt chosen again, secure, whole. And then, without warning, she would disappear emotionally. She'd cancel plans because she was overwhelmed. She'd say she needed time to figure herself out. Sometimes she'd admit she was talking to someone else, but always framed it carefully, like a confession designed not to hurt me. "I don't know what I feel," she'd say. "I'm scared of committing. I don't want to lose you, but I don't want to lie either." Those words lived rent-free in my head. I asked her once, quietly, if she loved me. She didn't answer right away. She stared at the floor like it might offer guidance, then said, "I don't know if I'm capable of loving anyone the way they deserve." I told her I didn't need perfect. I told her I was patient. I told her we could take things slow. What I didn't say was that every day of uncertainty was tearing something out of me. There were nights when she'd leave my place saying she needed to be alone, only for me to find out later she'd spent those same nights with someone else. When I confronted her, she cried. Always cried. Told me she hated herself. Told me she was broken. Told me she didn't mean to hurt me. And somehow, I ended up comforting her. She never technically cheated. Not in the clean, obvious way people understand betrayal. But she kept me in limbo, half loved, half waiting, while she explored every version of happiness that didn't require choosing me fully. I started measuring my worth by her availability, by how quickly she replied, by whether she invited me over or kept me at a distance. I became hyper-aware of tone, punctuation, silence. My phone felt heavier than it should have. Friends asked why I stayed. I didn't have a good answer. I said things like, "She's been through a lot," or "She's just scared," or "When it's good, it's really good." What I meant was, I was already too deep to imagine leaving. One night, after she'd gone quiet again, I sat alone in my car outside her place. Engine off, hands shaking on the steering wheel. I didn't go in. I didn't text. I just sat there, realizing something terrifying. I wasn't afraid of losing her. I was afraid of finally admitting that she had never truly chosen me at all, and still, when she called the next day, apologizing, saying she missed me, I answered because hope, when mixed with love, is one of the most dangerous addictions there is. Asterisk, I didn't want to know his name. That's the lie I tell myself now. The truth is, I obsessed over it long before I ever heard it. I imagined him in fragments, taller than me, more confident, less patient, someone who didn't wait, someone who didn't ask, someone she didn't hesitate with. She told me about him on a rainy Thursday evening, sitting across from me at my kitchen table. The rain tapped against the window like it was counting down to something inevitable. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "There's someone else I've been talking to," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "It doesn't mean anything. I needed to feel something different." I remember nodding. I remember telling her I appreciated her honesty. I remember saying I understood. What I don't remember is when I stopped breathing. She said his name casually, like it wasn't about to burn itself into my memory. She said he lived nearby, that he made her laugh, that he didn't pressure her, that he felt easy. Easy. I wondered what I was. Then, heavy, complicated, a responsibility. She promised me she wasn't choosing him. She said she just needed space to think. She said I was still important to her. She said she loved the way I loved her. That night, after she left, I sat on the floor with my back against the couch and stared at the dark ceiling. I replayed every moment we'd ever shared, searching for the exact point where I became optional. Over the next few weeks, she drifted further away, not abruptly, but deliberately. Texts grew shorter. Calls became rare. When we did see each other, there was a tension between us, like she was already halfway gone. I started doing things I'm not proud of. I checked her social media, even though I told myself I wouldn't. I noticed new inside jokes in her comments, a familiar name appearing more often, late-night active statuses when she told me she was sleeping. I asked her if she was still seeing him. She hesitated. "I don't want to lie to you," she said. That hesitation told me everything. One night, I finally snapped, not in anger, in exhaustion. I asked her what she wanted. I asked her to choose. I asked her to stop keeping me suspended between hope and heartbreak. She cried. Again, she told me she was afraid of making the wrong choice. She told me she didn't want to lose me. She told me she didn't know if love was supposed to feel this confusing. I told her love wasn't supposed to feel like this. For a moment, I thought she understood. She held my face in her hands and said she was sorry. She kissed me gently, like someone saying goodbye without using the word. The next day, she didn't text. When she finally did, hours later, she said she needed more time. That was the moment something inside me broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently, because I realized that if someone truly loved me, they wouldn't need time to decide whether I was worth choosing. And yet, I still waited, because part of me believed that if I just endured a little longer, if I stayed kind, if I stayed available, she would eventually see what had been in front of her all along. I didn't know then that love doesn't reward endurance. It only reveals how much pain you're willing to tolerate before calling it hope. I wish I could say there was one dramatic moment that ended everything. One sentence, one confession, one undeniable betrayal. But the truth is worse. It ended in inches. It ended in the slow realization that I was shrinking myself to fit into a place where I was no longer wanted. The final blow didn't come from her mouth. It came from her absence. Days would pass without a word. I'd stare at my phone like it was a lifeline, convincing myself she was busy, overwhelmed, thinking. Every vibration sent a jolt through my chest. Every silence felt like punishment. When we did talk, she sounded lighter, calmer, like someone who had already made peace with a decision I was still bleeding over. One night, I ran into her by accident. She was laughing. Not politely, not carefully, laughing the way she used to with me, head tilted back, eyes half closed, completely unguarded, and he was there, standing close enough that their arms brushed when they moved. She froze when she saw me. Her smile collapsed like it had never existed. He didn't look surprised at all. That was when I understood. I wasn't part of a choice anymore. I was the guilt she managed. She followed me outside, calling my name, apologizing before I'd even said anything. The street smelled like wet asphalt and cigarette smoke. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clench them into fists. "It's not what it looks like," she said. I laughed. It came out wrong, cracked, almost hysterical. "It's exactly what it looks like," I replied. She cried again, told me she never meant to hurt me, told me she loved me in her own way, told me she didn't know how she ended up here. I asked her if she had slept with him. She didn't answer. That silence landed heavier than any confession could have. Something inside me went quiet then. Not numb, just done. I realized I had become someone I didn't recognize. Someone who begged for clarity. Someone who accepted half-truths. Someone who waited in emotional hallways while the person they loved lived a whole other life. I told her I couldn't do this anymore. She reached for me, panic in her eyes. Said she wasn't ready to lose me. Said maybe she just needed a little more time. I had given her months. Pieces of myself, my dignity, my peace. I stepped back. And for the first time, I didn't comfort her. I walked away while she was still talking. That night, I went home and sat alone in the dark. No music, no distractions, just the sound of my own breathing and the ache in my chest that felt like grief, because that's what it was. Grief for the version of her I loved. Grief for the future I imagined. Grief for the man I was before I learned how easily love can turn into damage. I didn't block her immediately. Part of me hoped she'd fight harder, that she'd show up, choose me, say the one thing that could make me stay. She did, and single quotes T. And slowly, painfully, I began to understand the most devastating truth of all. Sometimes people don't leave because they don't love you. They leave because loving you would require them to become someone better than they're willing to be. People talk about moving on like it's a destination. Like one day you wake up and the weight is gone. The memories lose their teeth, and the name stops echoing in your head. That's not how it happened for me. What came instead was something quieter, heavier, permanent. After I walked away, the days didn't suddenly get better. In some ways, they got worse. The adrenaline faded, and what was left was the hollow space where hope used to live. I'd reach for my phone out of habit, then remember there was no one to reach anymore. Mornings were the hardest. I'd wake up with that split second of peace before consciousness returned, and then it would hit me. The truth, the absence, the reality that the future I had rehearsed in my mind was never going to happen. I replayed everything obsessively. Every conversation, every pause, every time she said she didn't know what she wanted. I wondered how long I'd been sharing her with ghosts and possibilities and other people I never saw. Some nights, I convinced myself I had imagined the connection, that maybe I loved harder than she ever did, that maybe I was too much. Other nights, I was angry, furious, even, at how easily she walked between lives while I was left picking pieces of myself off the floor. Weeks turned into months. She reached out once. A short message, casual, almost kind. Hope you're doing okay. I stared at it for a long time. That sentence carried no weight, no accountability, no recognition of what she had taken. I didn't reply. That was the moment I knew something had changed, not in my feelings, but in my boundaries. I started rebuilding slowly, not in dramatic ways, in small, unglamorous ones. I went for walks without headphones, just to feel my feet hit the ground. I cooked meals instead of skipping them. I sat with friends and let silence exist without filling it with her name. I didn't stop loving her overnight. Even now, I won't lie and say the love vanished completely. It didn't. It transformed into something duller, quieter, like a scar that aches when the weather changes. But here's what I learned, and it cost me everything to learn it. Love that keeps you guessing isn't love. It's erosion. Love that requires you to compete isn't love. It's survival. And love that only exists when it's convenient isn't love at all. I no longer wonder if she'd come back, because I finally understand that the version of her I wanted never truly existed, not in the way I needed. What existed was someone who couldn't choose, and a version of me who kept hoping they would. I still believe in love, but now I believe in a different kind, the kind that doesn't leave you confused, the kind that doesn't fracture your self-worth, the kind that stands still instead of drifting between options. This story didn't end with closure. It ended with clarity. And maybe that's enough, because I didn't lose her. I lost the illusion, and somehow, that's what saved me.